I have questions here. I've got the thing open so I can see what you've asked. I'm going to do them, and I'm going to go one by one. Okay. The first question was from Eileen. She said, punctuation issues, spacing paragraphs correctly, indentation issues, using italics to convey inner thoughts. Okay, punctuation issues. We're going to start with quotes. Quotes are interesting, right? Quotes, double quotes in American writing for any dialogue. Any dialogue at all. If someone is speaking, it goes in double quotes, period. If someone is using scare quotes, you know when any air quotes, right? Anytime there's a quote that is maybe for emphasis or something inside speaking quotes, then you would use single. Anytime someone is quoting someone else inside, it's single, okay? And then punctuation in there, if you're going to add said John as a dialogue tag, you have a comma. Even if it's, quoted John, and so it's in the single, you still have comma. However, if you're not doing a dialogue tag there, if you have an action beat in the middle there, then it's a period or an exclamation point. Okay, or question mark, whatever, right? So those punctuation will go inside all the quotes if it is a comma or a period. If it is an exclamation, I looked this up on CMOS, the Chicago Manual of Style, to make sure. If it is an exclamation mark or a question mark, an exclamation point or a question mark, then if it's not part of the quote, you have your single quote, your punctuation mark, exclamation, question, and then your double quotes, okay? If you're going to have a little bit of a fragmenty kind of action beat, you can use ellipses or an EM dash at the end. Give us that little action beat, start the quote again, give us either ellipses or an EM dash, and sometimes it's good to mix those, and then continue. Okay, so there are those ways to do it, and I'll give examples, on a sheet so you'll know what I'm talking about, other than just listening. But so all the punctuation that you can possibly get inside all the quotes is what you do, unless it's a quotation mark or an exclamation point. Okay, spacing paragraphs. When someone is speaking, okay. Here's something else about dialogue. Keep it to 2 or 3 max sentences without some sort of action beat. I don't like to go over 2 sentences. If my character says this sentence, I like to give them an action beat in the middle, even if it's just clearing his throat and then continuing, or let someone try to interrupt and he keeps going. Something to break it up. You gotta break it up. The long monologues that go like this, they don't get done anymore. Okay? People don't follow it. We've gotten too used to skimming blogs, and that's why when you learn about how to write blogs, they talk about, give them bullet points, give them lots of headers, give, anything to break it up, because people have learned to skim. And so you do the same thing. You give them the illusion of being able to skim by breaking up those monologues, because once you get those monologues going, it gets difficult. So if the topic changes, put someone else in between it. So if I'm talking, and I this whole thing right here, okay, if this was transcribed, right, there would be this paragraph about this little bit, but then I've switched from dialogue tags to action beats. So you wouldn't have an end quote over here. You would just have another beginning quote at the next paragraph about the next thing, and then you would have just a beginning quote, right? Yeah, we don't do that in dialogue in fiction anymore. We just don't. So you want to break it up with someone coming in with a question, or someone, some action happening, baseball through the window, anything to break it up before that person keeps speaking again. But usually there's another way to convey that information. Just say it, all right? I'm just going to throw that out there. So if my character changes directions completely in what they're saying, I will have someone break in, or I'll have them ask a question of someone so that we can break that up. If not, if there's no natural way to do that, you end that thing with a quote, give them an action beat at the beginning of the next paragraph, and then let them continue on the newer vein. Sometimes you can, if it's not going to be this giant paragraph, if it's just a sentence and then you got to change the direction of their speech, give them something in the middle of that paragraph and keep it in the same paragraph. Because when you switch from one paragraph to the next and it's dialogue, people are expecting that the next one will be the next speaker. So it has to be very clear if that next one is not the next speaker. It has to, and you have to do that at the beginning, because if you do it later at the end, they've just read it in someone else's voice and then are informed that, oh yeah, it really was, and it's this person's still speaking. So you really want to, if you've got 2 paragraphs with the same person speaking back to back, you've got to let them know at the beginning of that second paragraph that yes, this person is still speaking. That's why it's really better to interject something from someone else. It's really, break it up somehow, okay? And then indentation issues. I don't know what you mean by indentation issues, but as far as first line indents, you really do want to do that in the paragraph formatting. You want to use a first line indent. And I believe standard is 0.5. I can't stand 0.5. I think it's way too deep. So I do 0.35. Some people do 0.25. I like 0.35. 2.5, it's just not enough, and 5 is too much. So 3.5 works really great for me. But that's where you do it. Don't use tab. Because when you go in to do your formatting for a Kindle, tab is anathema. If you upload it to Smashwords, they will reject it if you use tab. They will reject it. They won't accept it. So whatever you do, just learn not to use the tab button at all. Format with paragraphs. You can modify up there in the ribbon, the headers and the normal and all that. You can modify it to whatever you want so that you can just hit that and it goes. You want to do that because it's a lot faster than, formatting. But otherwise, just grab a section, change it, you're good to go. But don't use tab. Pretend tab doesn't exist. And don't use more than one hard return. Just throwing that in there for a freebie. Okay, and then italics to convey inner thoughts. Now, there's 2 things that I think is really important. There's 2 things that I think is really important. Use italics anytime someone is thinking to themselves, and if you use it like that, it's your thoughts right now. Do not use quotes. If it's someone else's thoughts, use quotes in italics. If they're just remembering it and not speaking it, okay. And if it's prayer, inner prayer, right now, this moment, you just use italics. If it was in the past, if you're remembering something you thought before, if you remember something someone else thought before, you use quotes, and you make sure that the reader knows whose quotes they are, okay? Text messages, I'm gonna throw this in for a freebie. Please don't use italics for text messages if you have any other inner thought, inner prayer italics in your book, because the reader won't know which way to read it. It'll be so confusing. I've used caps for a long time because I didn't know what else to do. Nothing else worked. In print it does. You can change the font and boom, you've got it, as long as you're not having 60 million fonts. Sorry, Barbara. But as far as as far as caps, I was talking to some of the gals in a collection I'm in, and the one gal says, yeah, I use caps too, I just change them all to small caps. Genius. I'm telling you, it's totally genius. Small caps don't have that in-your-faceness, so you can just type normally, and what I do is I use an asterisk to let me know that this is beginning of text so that I can go and search all those at the end and change them. And then I use small caps. I select, go to the font, and change it to small caps and move along. Works great. But when I'm typing it out and I'm just writing, I just use an asterisk and I write it the way you would write any other sentence. You don't do all caps. You don't do anything. You just write normally. Okay? Just throwing that in because, whatever. And, Eileen, thank you. I hope I've already gone over the how to be sure it's clear who's speaking. Look at it and see where can I add it and what can I change. Usually you're going to give us a little bit of an action beat before it, or you're going to have someone address them in some way. It depends on the scene. I can't give you a lot of, just random stuff, but what I can do is I'll find good sections and bad sections in my own writing to show the difference. It's the best way for me to do it. So I will have that in the link sometime today.